do appreciate you all coming tonight, and thank you very much to Steve for the introduction, and again for your time in being here. Getting IT right. Who doesn't use IT in their business? No hands up. A few years ago, and it still circulates, there was this story. What helped you to think about IT and tonight? There was a particular business, and they had a server, several servers, but there's one particular server, and it was their database server. And on that database server, there was, the finance application and the HR application. There's some special applications. And one particular period of time, they'd go home of a night time, and they'd be working. They'd come in the morning, and it just wasn't on. It just wasn't working. And so, scratching their heads, they sorted out they went through patching of the operating system, and they checked all the database and just made sure, Microsoft SQL was working fine. They checked through logs. They made sure the applications were socialised. This went on and on. Did backups work, not work? And so, incredible frustration by all concerned. Until one of the blokes on the IT team, he said, look, what I'm actually going to do, I'm actually going to stay overnight and observe. So that's what he did. Nominated day came, he went and had some tea, early tea, came back about 5 o'clock. People started to leave the office, and so he set himself up in a quiet place in the office where he could see the server in the server room, but no one could see him. And people left, and it was quiet in the office, lights went off, and the noise outside rose with the peak hour traffic and went back down, and 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. About 11:30, 12 o'clock, lights came on. Cleaners arrived. Oh, that's okay. Cleaners are meant to come. And so he was there watching the cleaners, and they watching empty the bins and wipe down some walls and just generally tidy things up. And then he saw, the bloke's coming out there with a vacuum cleaner, undoes the extension cord, unplugs the server, plugs the extension cords in, goes and does his stuff, and the bloke sitting there in the corner, oh, goodness me. And so he watches, and the bloke finishes vacuuming the carpets, unplugs the extension cord, plugs the server back in, rolls up the extension cord, and off he goes. And the IT bloke sitting there, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, it was that simple. But really, it just demonstrates there was just a bit of fresh thinking. Just something a little bit, it just wasn't the normal IT stuff. Let's just apply some fresh thinking. Let's look at things afresh tonight. And that's what tonight's a little bit about, just to help you perhaps think a little bit differently about IT, just to, where are we? Just to perhaps some fresh thinking. So what we're going to do with introduction about myself, why we're here, then look at the decision framework, applying that framework, your decisions, and what should be the point of IT investment. That's a question, how do you get IT right? So tonight is a night for thinking. Tonight is a night for working on your business, not in your business. Tonight's a night for thinking about perhaps there might be a not-for-profit or a community group or some other business or something that you're aware of, and they're probably going through some questions about IT and all that sort of stuff. So tonight's a night, just a bit of a space. I've got a workshop here, a sheet here to hand out in a little minute. So, who is Paul Tero? Born and bred in Adelaide. You might see the picture there in Adelaide. Lived for a number of years up in Alice Springs and moved down here to Melbourne in '99. There's a range of companies I've worked for. over the time. Most recently, for Salvation Army for 10 years, I was network manager there, so I had responsibilities, Vic, Tas, SANT, WA, as well as some global responsibilities as well. Over the years, I've kept up my professional development. I've got an MBA in Technology Management, International Business Masters, did a research dissertation through there, and I've just finished a Masters of Strategic Foresight, so that's where the futurist stuff comes in. From an IT perspective, IT qualifications, there's the ITIL, which is Operations Management, Microsoft. Prince 2, that's Project Management qualifications with TOGAF, which is Architecture. Member of the Australian Computer Society, Institute of Company Directors, and also the Association of Professional Futurists. So I bring to you tonight, there's not just one way to solve problems that you have, yeah? And also too, right through over the years, I've been involved in IT since the early 90s. You know, IT strategy and thinking about IT, many times I've got this, you know, people have this laundry list of, yeah, I've got to do this, and there's no coherence about what they have. First things first, thinking about you, your business, or that community group or whatever you're thinking about tonight, it should have a business plan. It should have a strategy. It should have, you know, what's the vision and what's the strategic objectives through which you're going to meet that vision. And there are different ways of developing that strategic plan. You could use Porter's 5 forces. Porter's 5 forces, what's the power of the buyers and the suppliers? What's the threat of new entrants, the threat of substitutes? What's the competitive rivalry? You could use that thinking to develop your strategic objectives. People know about SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Some people use the balanced scorecard as a method for developing strategy. You know, thinking about your internal systems, thinking about your customers, your finance, and that fourth thing about learning and development and how you're developing. And other people, and this is also quite a good one, the futures triangle. What the futures triangle is this. There's 3 sets of questions around what's the weights of the past, what's actually holding you back. Second set of questions about what's the push of the present, what's actually forcing you to change. And the third set of questions is around the pull of the future, what's actually attractive about the future. And so there's different ways of actually developing your strategic plan. So what I want you to do for now, this is where, if you've got a pen, I've got a pen if you want the pen. What I want you to do, your strategic objectives. So for the purposes of tonight, sure. What are the strategic objectives? What is the business plan? What are the major things that you're going to do in your business? Not IT, but in your business. Is it want to open up new markets? Is it I want to move geographically? Is it I've got to develop my staff? What is it? What are the 2 or 3 or 1 thing or whatever? Just some of those major things. So we'll just spend, silence is okay. So we'll just spend probably about a minute just in thinking about those strategic objectives, those business plans, those major things that you want to do. Okay. So just put that to one side and just we'll move on from there. What I have noticed, observed, and it's probably pretty much common sense. One thing that is common is our use of time. It's our effective use of time. Your use of time is linked to your productivity. And I like to draw a bow between use of time, productivity, your information flows. How well your information flows determines how productive you are. And guess what? Information sits on information technology. So if you have the right IT, you've got good information flows, you've got good productivity, and everybody is using time effectively. We can lose money, lose property, lose reputation or whatever. But once, Benjamin Franklin put it well when he said, the only thing you can lose, well, if you lost time, you can never find it again. It's one of those things you just can't find again. So the effective use of time is critical, and that's tied up with productivity, it's tied up with information. Having done some consulting work in local government, for a national food manufacturer, for another manufacturer just recently, get the IT right and things are a whole lot better. With the national food manufacturer, it was a $17 million a year turnover. I said to them, look, went through the whole strategy development process. Okay, if you spend 750 grand, you'll be saving 440 grand a year. So it's just making sure that the IT is right, and the effective use of time is critical. And there's lots of stuff you can sort out with strategy. There's lots of strategy schools, but one way of thinking about strategy is your resources and capabilities, your resources. And if you can use your resources properly, you can sustain competitive advantage, yeah? If you're not sustaining competitive advantage, at best you're just treading water, and at worst you're going backwards out of the market. And so you need to be able to use your resources and capabilities well to be able to maintain competitive advantage. And this model put up by Barker in the early 90s, it's different layers here. So the first way of looking at your resources and capabilities, do you have something that is valuable? Is there something that you have which is valuable from the terms of defensive or offensive, or to give to your, to sell to your clients? Is there something which is valuable? And the second question about that valuable resource, those resource capabilities, that resource is valuable. The next layer, how rare is it? Is it that area of geography? Is it that process? Is it that supplier? What is it about that valuable resource which is rare? Third question, the third layer, is it imitable? Yes, it might be rare, but how easy is it to copy it? How easy is it to imitate it? And then the final question is, how organised are you to use that resource? Are you organised? And I want to put it to you tonight that being organised, in part, yes, there's HR and people and all that sort of stuff and whatever, but being organised is about your IT, is about your information technology. And so your sustainable competitive advantage is in part dependent upon how you're using your IT. Do you have the right IT? Have you got your IT right? And associated with that how well you're organised is reliant upon the information flows. How well, how easily, how efficiently is your information flowing? As you can see, I tend to think a little bit in layers and, digging in, but sometimes you just don't look at stuff on the top. You dig away and look down, and that's what I'm doing here. So sustainable competitive advantage, your organisation. So how do you think How do you think? What framework, what model, how do you think about your organisation? The organisation, how well you're organised to exploit what you have that is of value. One way of thinking about it is with Porter's value chain. Anybody heard of Porter's value chain? A couple of people? What Porter's value chain, any organisation, could be one-man operation, like myself, or it could be 50 people in the office, it could be BHP right across the globe. 7 West with lots of different business units, whatever. There's 2 different parts to the organisation. There's the primary flow, there's the primary set of activities, and then there's the support activities. So your primary activities, there's the inbound. So whether you're manufacturing, whether you're insurance, real estate, whatever, there's got to be something coming in. There's an input. And then there's got to be some operations, how you're actually creating value. And then there's the outbound. How do you get it out the door, whatever it is? And then there's the other 2 key primary activities, your marketing and sales, letting other people know. And then there's the after-sales service, there's that whole service. The supporting activities, firm infrastructure, HR, and so on. But I just want to focus on those primary activities. So we're talking about information flows. We're talking about your primary activities. We're talking about how well things are organised. So let's think about that organisation that's on your mind tonight. The information flows through that chain. Sorry?
You give an example of the inbound.
Yeah, absolutely. Say for example, this food manufacturer this morning dealt with earlier this year. They make cakes. What do you need for cakes? You need flour and sugar and flavouring. Well, that's your inbound. And it's got to come in somehow and it's got to be stored somehow. And so it's all that stuff which comes in. Yep. Then there's the operations. So there's all this, there's cake manufacturing lines and there's ovens and there's cutters and there's all that. So there's that operation to turn that input stuff and then the manufacturing line to the outputs, and then it was all stored and then shipped out to their clients. So that's the inbound, the operations, and the outbound logistics. And that applies to real estate. It applies to, a consultancy like mine. It applies to insurance or whatever the business. There's got to be an input and all the logistics associated with that. There's got to be some operations to actually create the value from those inputs, and then it's got to get out the door. Marketing, sales, you've got to tell people about it, otherwise no one's going to buy it. And then if things break down, to maintain reputation, then you've got this service. Is that clear?
More in the consulting area, that's the one that I
Yeah. So if you think about...
Is it your customer? Is that your inbound?
So what is it? What's the value that you create that the customer buys? Hence the system. So the inbound, just like myself, that inbound, it's not as majestic as a manufacturer, but it's more like there's the reading, and there's the study, and there's the newsletters, and there's all that intellectual input. And so for me, then with the operations, and like yourself, it goes in between here, and we massage it and all that sort of stuff, and then we apply it. Yep. So same with a not-for-profit. You can apply the same sort of things to community groups, not just for profit. And so this is where we're going tonight, is this, and these are these 3 questions. For each of those blocks, here are 3 questions for you to answer. What applications do you use with your inbound? this national food manufacturer, they had Excel spreadsheets. Yeah. For the operations, they had a form of an ERP system, and then everything else was Excel spreadsheets. And so it was all messy, so things weren't flowing properly. And so what application, turning our mind to the thing you've done those strategic plan for, the thing that you're thinking about tonight, what application do you use for the inbound? What application do you use for your operations? What application do you use for the outbound, for marketing and sales, for your service? Then the next question is, where does that information come from? For the marketing and salesperson for this food manufacturer, it came from pieces of photocopied paper, from some Excel spreadsheets, and from a CSV file spat out of the ERP system. Not very efficient at all. So where does the information come from for each of those blocks? And then the third question is, how efficient is it to get the information into that application? Does someone need to rekey it, print it out, send the paper over to put it on the next desk, and someone's got to retype it in? Yeah? So we just want to spend just a couple of minutes just in answering those questions for yourself, because this is the art of strategy. The art of strategy is thinking, stepping back and applying the grey matter. And we've all got an abundance of grey matter.
Paul, when you talk about what application do you use, are you specifically referring to software, or
Yes.
can it be?
Yeah, we're talking about IT strategy.
Yes.
Or,
for example, for inbound, working much like you as a consultant, that information comes in from a variety of different ways. But if you're saying, how is it routed through?
no, what does it come into?
Okay.
Yep. So that's your domain for your business or whatever the organisation is. Your domain stretches from that first boundary of the inbound to the last boundary of the service. So what is the application that stands there collecting the inbound information? Might be just an Excel spreadsheet. That's fine. Might be a Word document. Might be a CRM system or an ERP system. Is that making sense? Yep. So we'll just spend a few minutes, excuse me, just go over each of those and just think about, if you can't answer all the questions, that's fine. Now what I want you to do, and we'll keep the music going because it's a little bit of other work for you to do, against each of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, put a 1 to 5. 1 that's not causing me any pain, 5 it's causing me heaps of pain. Yeah, so there might be, you might end up with 5 5s. You might end up with 5 1s, or 2 2s and 3 3s. So what aspects, what is it inbound which is causing you grief, the most pain, that when you leave tonight, yep, that's exactly what you're going to be working on? Or is it outbound? Yep, you just need to get that sorted out. My marketing and sales is not right. It's just I'm losing customers. That's the thing I need to work on. So just put a 1 to 5 against each of those. So just, what we're going to do now is move on to decision making. In my research dissertation that I did, I interviewed several ASX listed companies based here in Melbourne with operations internationally. And I was answering the question, what should be the point of IT investment? What should actually be the point? And so I came to this conclusion that you've got there's two parts to, it's probably common sense to a lot of people, but what I found in talking with these people, there's 2 parts to every business. One is the operation side, and the other is the value creation side. And so when it comes time to make decisions about your operations, you're not creating profit out of your operations. When it comes time to make decisions there, it might be HR, it might be buildings, whatever, but let's focus on IT. Really the decision there is a total cost of ownership. How can I do these operations for the lowest cost? That's the question. It's a TCO, it's operational efficiency. Should I spend 10 grand or 9 grand or whatever? So if you can do it for the lowest cost, that's the type of question there. On the other hand, if it's creating value for you, if it's creating profit, if it's creating income, it's an ROI decision. It's not a TCO decision, it's an ROI decision. Am I going to spend $100,000 and get a 12% return? Or am I going to spend $90,000 and only get a 5% return? So it's an ROI decision. It's not a cutting cost decision. It's a maximising profit decision. It's a maximising income decision. So there's two types of... So when it comes time to make decisions about IT and IT investment, the back end, reduce costs, on the front end, on the value creation, it really is about a value creation, really about ROI. And this is where I sit. You know, I don't sell hardware and software. I just sell this consulting. There's no when I come into businesses and talk with them, there's not a, oh look, I've got these widgets or this bit of software to sell you. No, here are some framework, here's some thinking, let's go through this. Now you go and I'll help you, might guide you, but ultimately it's your decision. I'm not selling hardware or software. It's just, let me help you think. You've got some business problems or there might be some things you need to do. Let me help you think about them. And so the way to think about them is at the back end, it's costs. At the front end, it's value creation, improving. So, circle right back to where we started from. You've got your strategic objectives, which you have listed there at the top, at the start of the night. Really what you're aiming for is alignment with IT to your business. Sometimes it's IT which drives the business. Might be okay, but generally, what direction is the business going? And IT should be behind that and supporting that. So, back to your worksheet there. You filled out the strategic objectives and you feel like this, did a brief value chain analysis and you put a 1 and 5 and so on next to them. Will solving that 5 meet one of those strategic objectives? Have a think. So you said tonight, yep, I'm going to go away and this is my pain, I'm going to fix that up. So the question is it actually going to meet a strategic objective? And so there's 3 questions. So the first question is, will fixing up those pain points, those high pain points, actually meet your strategic objectives that you want? The second question is, regarding those pain points in specifically, should your thinking be TCO thinking, operational efficiency thinking, or should it be ROI thinking, value creation thinking? The third question, are there actually things on there that you've gone through which are actually going to meet your strategic objectives? Are you missing some things? So just some food for thought there. So we're almost finished. So getting IT right. What should be the point of IT investment? To increase the value of the firm. Aligning IT with your business strategy, not necessarily the other way around. And so you increase the value of the firm by aligning IT with business strategy, and you increase the value of the firm by focusing on value creation and operational efficiency, not necessarily the same decision-making process. You know, in my research dissertation, there was a term that came up, the ripple effect. And, you know, people, you're talking about major company, you do some literature review and, you know, you reflect on, and people have asked these BHPs and major banks in the UK, and they asked all these questions, and, you know, they spend tens and hundreds of millions of dollars on this IT. And there was a term called the ripple effect which came out. And this ripple effect was, well, someone just spent $1,000 on this program and it affected the whole organisation. There was this, you know, when you drop a stone into a pond and it just, poof, and it just ripples out. And so you've got these major business executives focusing on the big things, but sometimes the real big change just happens with the smallest of programs. So that was just a point, just by the by, that, you know, think about your IT. Don't roll the dice necessarily and make some wrong decisions, but think through your IT, because that way you'll sustain your competitive advantage. That way you'll increase the value of your firm. So, next steps. Just about finished. Regarding your IT, not necessarily hardware or software, you know, I sell, but let's have a think about, or there might be someone else that you know of. Let's have a chat, let's go for a coffee and think through some stuff. And also too, I think a lot of us here, I run just to let you know, just as an aside, I run a weekly business radio show on 3SER. So if you'd like some free business promotion, come and have a chat every Tuesday morning. Talk for 15 minutes, just about your business and what you do. So that's always open. And also too, this other point here regarding other business needs. Sometimes, you know, when I go to clients and we start talking about IT strategy, other stuff comes up. You know, about HR or about finance or about marketing, or generally there's something else. I don't necessarily have the skills there, but I do know other people who do. And so feel free to chat. Oh, look, while we're going through this other thing came up. Okay, well, let me introduce you to some other people. And then also, I think we all know this ourselves, regarding your own business development, just networking, KC Cadina Business Group, Harry Warren with Steve. I'm president of KC Cadina Referral Network. We've got some other events. There's a bit of paraphernalia there on the table. So that's what I have for you tonight. Are there any questions before we close?
Let's thank you very much.
Thank you.